It is one of the greatest surahs. Even the Prophet ﷺ said, everything has a nur, and the nur of the Quran is Surah Al-Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad. And then we all know as a little kid, sometimes we play with it and we think that, oh, if this is equivalent to reading a third of the Quran. If I recite it 3 times, it's like I got the reward of completing the whole Quran. And we stick with it and recite it. And there's so many other virtues that I urge everyone to learn about these virtues, because these will help us and encourage us to continue keeping the Quran close to us and using it that way. If we don't have that encouragement, we're human beings. As kids, as adults, we always need something to sort of push us, something to help us to do and accomplish things. Whether it be in school, they put you on honor roll groups and give you prizes, or competition, or it's at work, there's bonuses. Wherever we're at, there's always something there to help us and motivate us. And the virtues of these surahs of the Quran are there to help us, motivate us, so that we can keep that surah amongst ourselves and with a part of our life. Now, we don't want the surah to just be just another surah that we recite all the time in salat. For example, it's like, oh no, I don't got a few more minutes, or I gotta go, I gotta do some other stuff. So, Qul Huwallahu Ahad. There's actually Sahaba that would choose to recite this surah in their salah, and they enjoyed it. And even the Prophet ﷺ, when he asked someone that, why do you recite it so much in your salah, he said, because I love it. I love the qualities that it mentions about my Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you're loving this surah, you loving this surah will enter you into paradise. So it's much more powerful than we think, and we should be reciting it as much as we can. We should be reciting it at every salah, but not with the intention to jump out of salah as fast as possible, but to enjoy it and understand my Lord, the one who's watching me right now, even more, because this is that a descriptive. And some of the scholars, they interpret and say that the reason why one of the reasons and the wisdom behind this being equivalent to a third of the Quran is because one of the major 3 concepts within the Quran is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also have stories, and there's law as well, which tells us how to live our life. But one of the main concepts, a third of the concepts within the Quran, one of the 3 main concepts is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And this surah just does an excellent job to teach us who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. In one hadith, even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam labeled this, not labeled it, but said that whoever knows this surah will come to know Allah. And then they started calling this surah Surah Al-Ma'rifah, because this is a surah which comes to know. Know who? Know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it starts with Qul Huwallahu Ahad. There's different ways to translate it. You can say He is Allah, the One, or He, Allah, is the One. Difference, a little bit difference in what you consider to be the grammatical breakdown of the Quran, and scholars differ in that. Nonetheless, the meaning is still there. Where one, Allah subhanahu wa taala, the first thing He says about Himself is that He is Ahad. And then some scholars, they say the huwa that's there is because they're referring to a lot of questions came. Like one of the reasons why the surah was revealed, there's a hadith where the polytheists started asking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a hadith where the Jewish communities in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam started asking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's also a hadith about the Christians asking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And different narrations say that this was the source of revelation for that. So it's like, this is what you're asking about? Well, let me tell you. The first thing is Allahu Ahad. Now, one of the ways to understand about Ahad is it's used differently than Wahid. Whereas Wahid is used to affirm, Ahad is used to negate. For example, when I say I haven't seen anyone, in Arabic you would use Ahad. And if you're going to say I saw one person, you would say I saw Wahid. Now, what this does is that Ahad is a quality within Allah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that negates everything else to be similar to Him. There's He is Ahad. Now we just think maybe number 1. In actuality, it's in so many different levels. He is one. He is unique. Everything about Him is complete, and that's unique in itself. For example, we as human beings, as creation, we live in opposites. This is our characteristic. We know whatever we know. There's things that we don't know. We have happiness, we have sadness. If we want our race to continue, we need a pair, man and wife. In plants and animals, all of this is needed, and it's in pairs. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows, and there's nothing that He doesn't know. There is no opposites or duality with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's unique and single, whereas the duality lies within the creation. The uniqueness and that singularity and that oneness is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just in His oneness in terms of numbers, but also in terms of Him being complete in every single way. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the second characteristic He says is Allahu Samad. Samad is a very comprehensive word, and there's different ways again to interpret it. But one of the easiest ways the Prophet ﷺ interprets it as is that He is the one that everybody turns to take care of their needs. That's as-Samad, the self-sustaining, everlasting. That He takes care of everyone's needs and He doesn't need anyone. In order for that, for us to understand how powerful He is and how much we should go to Him, we can understand it from this name. Because other people and other creation and things that we go to for help, we have to understand they are also in need, just like we're in need. They may not be in the same need that we have, or at that moment they might not need something, but we are always in need in something. That's the quality of creation. And whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't need any of it. So there's never any kind of bias. There's never ever running out. There's never a chance where He might not be able to help us. He is always there, and every single one of us can take all our needs to Him, and that will suffice, and that will take care of all of our needs. And even in hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says in hadith Qudsi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if every single one of you, from the beginning till the end, from the human beings and from the jinn kind, all of you come together and you start asking me and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Him and everything that they want, and I give every single person what they want, that will not decrease from what I have, no more than a needle will decrease when it's dipped into the ocean. You're comparing that little drop to the whole ocean, and that just shows that it's infinite. There is no like, oh, well, let's calculate how much volume is in a drop of water, and let's go measure the ocean and check how much volume is in the water. All that is finite. We can actually calculate it. But when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's infinite, and we need those kind of examples. Otherwise, everything would just be a symbol in the Quran, because there's no way to understand it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this example in the Hadith Qudsi to let us know that it's vast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's treasures is vast. We can all go to Him, and He is as-Samad. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He has not given birth, nor was He given birth to. Another way to say it is, He is not the father or mother of anyone, nor is He the son or daughter of anyone. And He negates what's the attributes that have been said to Him, because people attribute God to have a son, attribute God to have partners, and these things negate it. And why He negates the fact that He's a father first, because that is the quality that's been attributed to Him. And no one says God has a father. But the one that's attributed to Him is that He has no son. He has a son, that's what's attributed to Him. So He negates that first. But to make sure that this surah is a surah of clarity, that you don't ever even think of the opposite, He also says He was not given birth to. So He was, in other words, He negates the act of Maryam alayhi salam giving birth and the act of Isa alayhi salam being born. And saying that this is not the case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, what we do as human beings is we try to bring whatever we can understand to our limited understanding and limited ways of perception. So for example, what we can understand, like we can't put a value on infinite, we put a symbol on it. Now I know this little sideways 8 is infinity. And it's been something from a long time ago that we need something to show us. Well, okay, Allah, but where, who, like what kind of, how can I think of Him? And it's always this habit of just bringing down the Creator and to make Him and put Him in the form that we can say, okay, this is God. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not that. We cannot picture him, we cannot imagine how he is or who he is, any of his actions. We cannot understand any of it. And the very next ayah shows that, because he says, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and there is nothing similar or equal to him. If we can imagine it, if we've seen it, if we've heard it, this is not God. If we can picture it, this is not God. So we don't read an ayah of Quran or a hadith where it mentions an allegorical term of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like his hand, or in the Quran it's his shin, or things like that, and we try to picture it. We cannot. It's even against, we cannot, like in Islam, try to mimic an action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by using our own limbs. Because why? وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And to sort of put more emphasis on that similarity, on that equality, usually in an Arabic sentence, you bring the ism zarf, which is the condition. For example, it would be a complete sentence is, the way it would be read in Arabic, and I'll translate it, is, there is nothing like him. There's nothing to him in similarity. And similarity in Arabic always comes at the end of the sentence. And equality at the end comes at the end of the sentence. But over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts it before the fact that there's nothing. So he says, nothing in similarity is to him. Or to translate it verbatim from the words, to him in similarity is nothing. Lam yakul lahu, there's nothing, to him similarity, kufuwan ahadun, anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts more emphasis on the fact that that equality, that similarity does not exist when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we shouldn't try to picture anything. We shouldn't try to think of anything. When we start salah and we say Allah's watching me, there's no way to picture that, which is just this feeling that we understand that Allah's watching me. When we look at the sun and the creation, and we see the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His creation, and from that we come to understand how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. We don't try to give Him a symbol and say, oh, you know what, this light, if we put it over here in the masjid, this represents the light of Allah. We don't do any of that. There is not any kind of resemblance that we can have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And although we can't picture it, although we can't do anything like that, we still in our heart can come to understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Now there's many people that will come to question who created Allah, and this comes in a hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, when somebody does that, then just recite the surah, that He is one. And you recite it all the way to the end to affirm that what that thought is completely falsified. You can't just ask any kind of question that you want and expect that there's an answer to it. When the Creator, He created a starting point for creation. Now you're going to bring the Creator within that starting point. Then there is no starting point. Something had to have activated the starting point. Whether you consider it the Big Bang, whether you consider it something else, something comes. Nothing. Nobody in our logic would just believe that out of nowhere, slowly things start to gather and make something. Start a vacuum, and as long as it's a vacuum for as long as it wants, and see if anything will come into it. Yes, if there's a force from the outside, things will get in. But that force is an initiator. So we want to keep this surah, that's one way to just understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, but we want to use this surah. There was one time where the Prophet ﷺ was walked into the masjid, and a person was saying, Ya Ahad, Ya Samad, Ya Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad, Ya Lam Yakul Lahu wa Lam Yakul Lahu Kufuwan Ahad. He used the surah to call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make dua. To make dua for afterwards, obviously, for what he's going to say. Look at how beautifully he used the qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Himself with to make a dua. O One, O As-Samad, the Everlasting, O the One who is not given birth to anyone, nor is given birth to, and the One who nothing is similar to Him. That's the way we should be. Our relationship with the Quran, it shouldn't just be Allahu Akbar. It should not be that. We should go look at it and just use the Quran the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to, where we call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His own words. What's not going to be more acceptable than that? So when we call him through his own words, he describes himself as Ahad. So I say, oh Ahad, give me this. Oh Samad, give me this. So let's start using the Quran that way. Again, we want to apply it. We want to apply it in the way, not just in our actions, but over here, the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba at that time show us that we can also use the Quran as a part of our words, a part of our dua, to just make sure that we understand and that we're showing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like this words, your words are a part of my words, and I'll use these words, your words which are accepted, which are 100% correct. There's no more truthful words. I'm going to use these words to call on to you. Now help me in my situation. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for all of us and forgive us for all of our shortcomings. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.